Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series, where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Selden, and today's guest is Chrisa Zindros. Chrisa has 15 years in leadership and over a decade dedicated to executive coaching and business consulting. In her consulting, she brings a hands-on, transparent approach, leveraging her experience as a VP of marketing, CSO, and COO. She doesn't just tell clients what to do, but guides them on how to achieve their goals. From workshops and masterminds to coaching, she's there to guide, plan, train, and implement alongside founders and senior leaders. Chrisa, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
Happy
being here.
Saturday. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. So let's jump in. I'd love to talk about high performance cultures and how we get there. And I'd love to start off if you could help us understand what exactly is a high performance culture and how it differs from a regular culture.
Yeah, it's like we toss around these words often, and it's interesting because people forget that any culture you create directly correlates to the results a company produces. So if you're not intentional about your culture, it's not a high performance culture. So that's how you actually know, because you didn't take the time to define it, design it, and actually think about what is the point of the culture? What is it there to serve and produce? That's the first thing I like to say to people. So a high performance culture is a culture in which the founders, leaders are actively defining what they need the culture to produce. So that's how I like to look at it. Everyone is really obsessed with results. And
Yeah.
of course, we all want to make money. We care about the bottom line. All those things are true. But there's so many other results that a company needs to have. It needs to have a level of retention, a level of good morale, a customer service, all these things that are more subtle and soft results. And too often we try to measure high performance with, did we reach certain metrics? And we forget to really count the results that actually support those metrics. So a
Right.
high performing culture is one that actually has the internal conversations and the internal frameworks to ensure that we're meeting those milestones that produce the ultimate results of whatever thing we're trying to do, whether it's revenue or some version of market penetration or growth.
I love the definition, and it makes me think and wonder, how have you seen people focus on what I would call the in-process measures? I feel like everything that you described is what you can focus on in process that leads to the output measure. By the time you hit your output measure, it's already there. You can't really do anything about it. But as you said, I feel like we are always so focused on the output measure, and then we just fly by the seat of our pants in between to get there. How have you seen cultures calm themselves, step back, and focus on those in-process measures instead of just the outputs?
I wish I could say they've calmed themselves and stepped back. I mostly see it out of desperation.
Mm,
They have no other option. It's like choice, catalyst, and crisis. Usually
right.
there's some catalyst or crisis that makes people deal with that. Because if you think about it, most companies, if you're a large organization, you're indebted to your shareholders and you need to
Right.
produce some results, and nobody really cares about how the sausage is made. So we'll to use that expression.
Yeah.
If you are a mid-sized company, you really are living paycheck to paycheck, right? You're rubbing Peter to pay Paul. You're not focused on some of those internal processes because you're trying to get to make payroll or figure out how you're going to pay the rent this month. And if you're a startup, you're certainly not really thinking about those components because you're really there to gain market share. So part of the challenge really is that when people are brought to their knees is when they start to realize that it's important. There's some founders and leaders of organizations that are naturally wired to care about the internal stuff. But most of the people that we elevate to these positions are either great salespeople and they just can go out there and win over hearts and minds, or they're the visionaries and then they're just not wired for like the internal work. What I think is really important as a founder is to know this about yourself and make sure you bring in somebody that can support you in doing the inner stuff, and then also to really get that you're not going to do it by choice. You have to force yourself to do it. It's almost like doing planks. I like to say we have to do that part.
And it's so important to, I feel like, set aside that ego as a founder or as a leader, because you're going to intentionally bring in that person that you talked about to help you realize that you're getting to that point. But then so many times you find leaders, especially the people who sometimes start up things, they're the one. This idea is their baby, this business is their baby. They have that ego. And then they bring in this person to challenge them to make sure that they stay true to what needs to happen. And then they ignore the person who's challenging them because of that thought process.
I know I want to say hi to all my clients right now. Hi. That's what I want to say. It's true because the person that you bring in inevitably will slow you down. And if you're feet held to the fire to drive some top line growth, or that you're trying to figure out how to pay payroll, or whatever the outside result is you're trying to get, and someone like me or a CEO that you hired or a process person or HR person is slowing you down, it feels crazy. And
Right.
it feels like we can do it faster. And what's the point of all this? And that's where the real friction point lies. And so that's why I think it's really important for people to really understand the purpose and function of each role that they need to have on board to actually be the successful company or have that high performance culture that they want to have. It doesn't work if the CEO feels consistently slowed down by the ops person or the CFO, whoever it might be. And it may not even be the CEO, it might be the ops person that feels slowed down by the finance person, whatever the dynamics are. Because if you're talking about building a high performance culture, what that inherently means, I'm going to bypass this person, or I'm going to try to make the process go faster, and then I'm going to do it out of order and then not get the same result. And then we're all going to be stuck in this conversation about our process doesn't work. Well, we don't follow the process step by step. So it's like, I always say I was a horrible math person, but I always say that equation, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally for the order of operations. If you do division before addition or whatever it is, it doesn't work. You don't get the same answer. So we have to follow the process before we say it's broken or the person didn't set the right process. You got to follow it. So that's where cultures start to trip over each other, and they are not high performance because they're not appropriately respecting and giving credibility to the people that actually need to pull you back so that you can be sprung forward.
And I feel like they jump too quickly. You build up this culture and it's new, and you have to build that trust and you have to build that relationship first. But everybody wants to just jump in before you do that groundwork. And as silly it is to say you have to slow down to speed up, that's really what you have to do. You slow down, you invest, you put the time in, and then once you can get that system working the way it should, then you can speed up. But if you try to speed up from day one, there's all that collateral damage, like you said, and you just never get to where you want to be.
Exactly. And then everyone's always mystified. I don't know why we can't scale. And I'm like, the answer is, again, hi to my clients. The answer is didn't follow your process. And then there's also too, I think, the reality that it's not just slowing down to go fast, but also then having the discipline to follow through on the things that you said you were going to go do. Because again, if we're talking about this from the context of founders being more visionary or more salespeople, and they're more driven output measures or more creative measures, and it doesn't have to just be this, but if we're looking at it from that context, what ends up happening is that they don't lean into the things that require their diligence and their thinking in a different way or following a method because it doesn't feel good naturally. And so we don't lean into the things that are hard for us. Right? We'll do the things that come easier because they're more fun and there's a better dopamine hit and we're more successful at it. So because of that, it's sometimes not a matter of slowing down. People will say, we did the workshop, we brought in the consultant, we did the mission statement, we did this process overhaul, we've got the new system, but still something breaks down, and it's in that discipline of doing and leaning into the things that are hard for you. And that's what high performance cultures do, is they lean to the things that are hard for them and they have accountability with the structures that they said they were going to follow.
And you mentioned something earlier about making sure everybody in this culture that you're building knows what they need to do. How do you coach people to effectively set expectations to those people so everybody's very clear on what they're supposed to do and everybody works towards the same goal so they're not siloing themselves off as the founder or the visionary is trying to get everybody to go into one place?
Yeah, this is a really hard thing to do inside companies. And the more bureaucratic they are, the more layered, the more challenging it is. There is no shortcut to it. So that's the first part, and it takes time. And that's not good news for most people. But I have been trained in a bunch of different modalities for consulting models as well for coaching models. And one of them is like this EOS model, which I'm sure you've heard about. Maybe you've had people on your podcast about it. And it's very much like everybody should know the thing that they're doing and the number they have to do. They break it down and make it very simple. And while it is very simplistic, it actually is that simplistic. People need to know that your main function is to keep these 10 clients happy and to get 3 more clients this month. And that just takes away the noise. And oftentimes when we go into strategy sessions or planning sessions, we have all these beautiful big ideas. We're going to grow market share with 75%. And then it's okay, but what's the thing that we're actually doing? And people leave the strategy session with this big idea, but then those tactics that have to get created or those micro strategies have to get created. And then that's where we lose the momentum. And that's where we don't remember to actually communicate all the way out. So the answers are that having the big ideas are great, but needing to also do those kind of micro strategy sessions to get clear. And then also literally sitting down with people and walking them through it, holding their hand, which sounds obnoxious, and then making sure that everybody knows exactly what they have to do and how much, and when you're going to check in to see how they did it.
Right.
And that's the truth. And we're all too busy to do that. It's like we're all too busy, and shouldn't this VP be able to manage that on their own? And do I really have to ask them? And the answers are we're all too busy, and yes, you really have to do it.
It's the extra work until it becomes the work, right? It's extra until it becomes the norm. And I think the check-in, the accountability model that you describe is so important. It's so important to make sure that you're on track, but it's so important for the cohesion of the culture that you're building. Because if you and I are in the same team and John over to the side that we work with isn't being held accountable, but we are, you're just going to start destroying that culture and you're never going to get where you are, regardless of how many check-ins that you do.
Yes. And one thing I will say to anybody who is a founder or CEO or has had their business for a long time, sometimes what they will encounter is we've asked the person to put in place the accountability. We've worked with someone to make sure the structures are in place, and they're like, but they're not doing it. And so that's where I go back to the culture starts at the top. If you think it's a stupid process, if you're not holding people accountable, starting with yourself and making sure you're being annoying with your own metrics and the simplicity of what you need to do, and if you are not making it as a general conversation at your company, an important conversation to be having, the person in that supportive role cannot do their job. They lose credibility, and they honestly, over time, feel like, what's the point? You're not going to care. So I'm going to do the best I can in the ways that I can versus fighting all the various battles, which include the cultural battle of making us care about this. So I'll just go to the pockets where I know I can infuse results.
And if you don't hear about it, then you stop caring or you move on to the thing that you know is important.
Exactly, which is this drama of the day.
Exactly.
The dramas that happen all day long.
Yeah. You said starting at the top and really understanding the culture and being in favor of whatever we're asking to do, starting at the top. And I think people don't do that enough because you mentioned bureaucratic companies, organizations, cultures. A lot of times we have all of these processes and all of these things that have to happen. Nobody can explain why they have to happen, but they have to happen. And a lot of times to create that healthy culture, that person at the top should not only believe in what they're doing, but really evaluate all of these processes that they're asking everybody below them to go do because people are busy. And half of the reason people are so busy is because they're doing all these processes that don't add value. And then they skip that one process that does add value and it just derails everything.
Very true. Yes. Yes, very true.
We talk a lot about top down. A lot of what we've talked so far is starting from the top. How do you support bottom up when that founder, that visionary is asking the team to do everything all at once and it's just not possible or people are over capacity no matter how much accountability there is, it's just not possible to get the work done. How do you have bottoms up coaching to make sure that everybody aligns on a goal and a strategy and everybody kind of moves in the same direction?
Really good question. This happens quite often in companies that are trying to either scale or they've encountered some massive problem that needs fixing, but then the rest of the business has to be sustained and move forward. So the answer actually is more of a series of steps that I like to follow. The first one is actually helping the leader or the leaders define what success would look like for real. And then understanding that some of that success might be long term. If we need to overhaul our IT system or we need to build a whole other arm of the business, but that's going to take multiple years. So what are the milestones? Because what people get stuck in is going, we've made no progress. We say these broad terms, we made no progress, we didn't get anywhere, no one's doing anything about it. It's like we throw our hands up, but actually it's because we don't have the milestone clarity and realistic milestone clarity. So that's the first piece or step in the series, is making sure that the milestones are outlined and everyone is in agreement about them. The other thing is understanding that there will be the roadblocks and things will divert you. We can't help that. It's going to happen. And we never know what wonderful diversion is going to come up today or this year. But it's important to go back to the why we are even planning to go where we want to go, or why we plan to go where we said we were going to go. We often lose sight of that why, and then we start to spiral. And then just get stuck in the minutia and make really no progress towards our goals. So defining the why this matters is very important. Again, it sounds trite, but it is effective and important to be able to know the purpose of. And then the last piece is making sure that there is good cohesion amongst the layers of the teams. And I like to always teach this, whether it's a person that I'm coaching that is a new manager, which I don't coach that much anymore, but if I happen to be coaching someone who's more junior level that way, or if it's more of a senior mid-level person or a senior person, I always like to teach that you actually have multiple functions inside of your job. Your first function is to be a good fill in the blank agency, company, organizational, firm, citizen. That's your first job. To really show up and to do the best you can for the overall company. That's who is employing you. Your second job is whatever team you're a part of. So if you're part of the leadership team, your job is to actually show up at that leadership team and you have a role on that job. If you're very senior, your role on that leadership team is to advise the CEO and be their advisor. That's why you're there. So that is taking on battles, guiding them, saying things in different ways than you would say if you were just managing up to them. So it's really knowing to define that. And then, of course, you have your actual functional lead, whatever you're managing, and then your day-to-day job and what you're doing. And so all these sort of different roles require you to code shift a little bit to figure out how to be who you need to be and how to manage up, manage across, manage down, and push things forward to get to the ultimate goals that you want to get to in the company. So I say that to say that most of the time we forget the level of power that we have in the various settings. And that's where things go off the rails. Because I've sat in meetings where this is a very senior person who won't speak up to the CEO or to the board that they have a real opinion that this is going to blow up. And they know it's going to blow up in certain areas of expertise. They can see it, they've lived it before, but they won't say it because they're trying to manage up appropriately. And actually in that setting, they're there to advise. So that's another part of the series, is getting people to understand their role and the various roles they have in driving the strategies forward so they can actually be a high performance culture.
So, as an upper leader, as a CEO, a founder, somebody's building this culture, how do they create that psychologically safe environment so that person who needs to speak up to maybe save the business because they're about to make a really dumb decision feels comfortable and confident enough to be able to speak up without a fear of retaliation or pushback or anything like that?
Yeah. The answer is in being willing to take feedback and actually hear it. That sounds simplistic, so I'm aware. But I'm going to add on to that. And what I like to say and what I've learned for myself, both being someone that's giving feedback and also someone that's gotten a ton of it. I always joke people are mad at me all day long. Literally, that's my day. People are just upset and they have problems. And I'm just like, okay, we're going to maybe figure it out today. I don't know. But oftentimes when they come to you, they're not always coming with feedback, meaning there's a difference between feedback and how someone feels. And understanding that is very powerful, and knowing how to hold what someone says to you is powerful. So psychological safety happens in an environment where people feel like they're included. So you're bringing them into conversations. They understand their role, that they feel like they can add value because they can speak up. There's a sense of belonging, meaning they see themselves. They understand that they're appreciated. Their wisdom and expertise is solicited. So all these things are very important and make a difference, but it all dies. There's a great saying about it takes forever to build trust, but then one lie kills it in like a minute or something like this. All of that goes away. All the wonderful work you've done with building ERGs and having all these brainstorms and all these meetings goes away the minute someone tries to give you feedback and you shut them down. It's just gone. And most of the time, why we get so irritated and shut down the feedback is because we don't believe it's real feedback about us. Some of that is because it's how the person feels, which is still valid and we have to listen to it. And the other part of it is that it's feedback, but because we're not present to the impact of what we're doing, we really live in the intention. So I have a quality, most of my friends know this about me, that I could be very defensive. And it's not because I don't want to hear the truth or what people are telling me. I'm actually someone that invites feedback. It's that if I get defensive, it's because I feel hurt. And instead of me saying that, it comes out as aggressive. So I think that when I'm being defensive, people are seeing that I'm hurt,
Mhm.
but all they're seeing is someone being a jerk. And so on the other side, people are scared of me, or they feel like they can't talk to me, or what's the point? I'm just going to get mad at them. And it has the opposite effect of what I want, which is someone to really see that I'm hurt. And I want them to say, I'm sorry, you're so hurt. I never get that because
Right.
the impact of my behavior is so far off from where my intention is. And that's why when people give us feedback, we're like, no, where I was coming from was this place, or that's not true, or that's not the whole story. And all that might be valid. But what you're really trying to get in feedback is the actual impact. And then using that information as ammunition to shape a better culture. And then separately from that, if it is not real feedback, meaning if it's not a 360 conversation about what happened, the cause and effect of it, and what needs to change, which is what feedback is, if people are just sharing how they feel, then if you want to create a sense of psychological safety, people have to be able to be their authentic selves. And so you have to then be willing to hear it and acknowledge it and just hold the space for it. And that in itself is very hard, especially as a leader when you're constantly getting bombarded with a bunch of people's opinions. It doesn't mean anything about you. I always say my family is Greek, so our time telling is very ish. It's directional. Like show up at 8. I don't know. That might be 9. Who knows?
Right.
10:30. There's no real 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I'm very flexible with time because of that. Culturally, like if someone is 20 minutes late to something, I'm like, okay, I had a drink and checked my email. It doesn't bother me, but other people would perceive that as that person being rude. So is it true that they're rude, or is that just how it makes you feel? And
Right.
understanding that is important for yourself. Is it actually the person being rude to me? Or is it just how I feel about it? And then I have to just own that because there's something cultural that I have to see within myself? Or is it real feedback to give to change a paradigm that can help us get to where we need to get to?
There's a lot on feedback, which I'm glad you went that deep because I think intent versus impact is huge that a lot of people don't think about. I do think as you build organizations and cultures, we do a lot on the feedback side, but you did mention appreciation and rewards as well. And I feel like we don't do that as well because it's so much easier to see the flaws in what we're doing and not the successes. With that, how have you seen these organizations create a reward structure back to where we started, a reward structure around the behaviors they want to see in their culture as opposed to just the output measures that they're going for?
Yeah. The companies that do it the best have it embedded in their day to day. Meaning that, yes, there's the rewards dinners, there is the regular performance reviews, there's giving people money. People
Yep.
really feel appreciated when you pay them. Market rate, especially, they like that one a lot. Promote them on time, these kinds of things. But it's the ones that actually embed and arm their leaders with the knowledge for how to actually have a recognition and appreciation structure. And what I mean by that is the people understanding how others like to receive or get recognition and appreciation, and making sure that there is a system within the company to promote that and hold the leaders accountable to it. And there's the book, The Five Love Languages, which everyone knows about.
Yep.
It's important to understand the appreciation slash recognition language of your employees that you directly manage, or the people that you're responsible for motivating or coalescing. It makes a big difference. I certainly know that I'm someone who is not a gift person. I don't really care about presents. I'm more of an acts of service and a time person. And I remember I was working in this company and I had my direct report at the time. She really wanted this new computer monitor and she had just gotten one. I was like, it's not that big of a deal. It's like only a few inches bigger. And I ignored her request for forever, only because I was being lazy. But finally, one Friday, I stayed late and I finally approved the request and sent it to IT. And the next week, she came in and it was on her desk. And you would think that I gave her like $20,000. She was so happy. She did extra work. She spent days on figuring out how to update this brand document that we were working on. And it was amazing. But she felt seen and appreciated and heard because she got this monitor. And to me, I literally worked off my little laptop. So I was fine with that. So it's really important to actually like get where you can meet people and as a company to build in practices and support structures for the leaders to do that, because it's a lot for leaders to do. If you have 30 people on your team, or if you're just a growing team and you're doing a lot of work, it's very hard to be like, what does each of my people need to have them be the most seen and heard at work?
And I just want to reinforce everything you just said because people don't do what you just said. And it's so important to do that because everybody values different things. And you're not always going to make everybody happy. There's always going to be that one person who's not happy with what you're doing. And like you said, if I have a group of 60 people and I'm trying to reward somebody as a team, it's highly unlikely my reward is going to make all 60 people happy. But you go for the majority, but you need to take the time to get to know your people and how they feel valued and how they feel rewarded, because I feel like on LinkedIn and everywhere you see all the memes and everything about the pizza party. I didn't get a bonus, but we're going to give you a pizza party. Sometimes you may have a team that likes the pizza party. They may have struggles and they don't have lunch and they may want the lunch. But more oftentimes you have the teams who don't and they want the money or they want the recognition or maybe just to go out as a team to go do something. The leaders don't take the time to understand who their team is and who they are as a person, and they fall flat when it comes to trying to set up a reward system. And then people don't feel rewarded. And then the leader goes, why don't you feel rewarded? I did this and I did this, but it doesn't touch the heart of the people.
Exactly. And if I can add to that,
Yeah.
there's like the 5 love languages. So at work, it's like words of recognition. So publicly recognizing people. There is acts of service or acts of contribution. So taking somebody along to a workshop or to a conference or having them just shadow you in a meeting. There is incentives and rewards like the pizza party, a scratch off ticket, an Amex gift card somewhere, those kinds of things. There is also body language at work, which is about, do you look people in the eye? Are you present in the Zoom meeting? Is your camera on when you're talking to the person? Are you on your phone when you're doing the one-on-one? Are you really available to them? Do you shake their hand? Do you tower over them? How do you respect them from this very quiet body language perspective? And that goes a long way, specifically for men actually in the workplace. And then time. In a world where many of us are hybrid, spending time with people, like actually taking them out to coffee, going out to dinner, and really getting to know about their personal life, or even just traveling with them, or prioritizing doing a face-to-face meeting, all these things make a difference for how people feel valued and
Right.
seen. And it is true that these matter, but also these will not compensate for people not being paid at market rate, not getting regular performance reviews, not having clarity about their comp structure, not understanding how they can ascend if they still want to ascend. So that doesn't substitute, right? So
Right.
like clarity of expectation and role matters. And many companies can use this. We're a great, fun company with a cool culture to not have to deal with the harder issue of our clarity and our comp structure and our organizational design. So I just want to flag that. And I will say too, usually this happens in companies that are scaling up pretty quickly. And so what they probably need to do is actually shrink their workforce
Mm.
because they've gotten too many people on and they haven't really thought about the comp structure and org design. And they need to actually spend time on that and to build the high performance culture. That would actually move the needle if that's what they're trying to accomplish.
They need to realize it's a support system and not a replacement system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chrisa, thank you so much for everything. Do you have any final words on high performance cultures or anything else that you want to share before we sign off?
I do have a final word. People oftentimes love to do a good retreat or a good workshop, and all those things are so wonderful. You should do them and do them for work. And I like going to them, so
Yeah.
do them. But I'm being somewhat tongue in cheek, but nothing replaces a good learning and development plan and also one on one support for leaders. And this is a big pitfall I see companies fall into when they're like, okay, we're going to work on our culture. We are going to do a mission statement overhaul. We're going to spend 6 weeks working on it. And then we do it and it dies out. So if you are going to take on improving your culture, it's thinking about the long term. Yes, that there's that first heavy hit that you're going to do with a workshop or retreat or whatever it might be. But to sustain that, it needs consistent action. And I see a lot of companies wasting money and time and just having these bifurcated efforts to develop culture, and then it just hurts the credibility with the team because then all they're going like, oh, we're going to do another workshop that doesn't matter. I'm going to read this other book. So it doesn't matter really what you pick. It's the effort and the intentionality and then the sustaining efforts to make sure that it gets embedded in the culture.
It's that consistency. Without that, like you said, you're going to lose everybody.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Again, Chrisa Zindros, everyone. I will have all of her information in the description area of the YouTube video and on all the postings that we send out. Please follow and subscribe to the podcast. It can be found on all podcast platforms. It's my Instagram at Leading Quarters, the YouTube page, which you're hopefully on right now watching this, at Leading Quarters. And you can email me with any questions or ideas that you have for any future episodes or future guests at leadingquarters@gmail.com. But Thank you, Chrisa. I really appreciate it. I think high performance cultures are so important, and we don't take the time, the approach, and literally everything that you talked about enough to really build them with consistency and intentionality. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your perspective on that. I think it's been great.
Thank you for having me.